One of the challenges faced probably daily by every Christian everywhere is this conflict between we want to be like Christ. That's actually where the word Christian comes from, a little Christ or a copy of Christ. We want to be like him, but we live in a state which makes it impossible to actually be like Christ. He did not have a sin nature, but we do. So what do we do with that? Well, in one specific instance, when we're talking about how we use words, like we were the last time we were together, is we see, we're only supposed to speak wholesomely. But when we read into Scripture, Jesus, for instance, one of the things we said was off limits is the derogatory insult. Yet, when we see the Gospels, Jesus used some very derogatory insults towards his opponents. Called them broods of vipers, he called them whitewashed tombs. Later, we see Paul writing in the New Testament, calling people dogs and emasculators and mutilators of the flesh. Those are definitely insults. They're not meant to be taken benignly. That's an acute attack for a person, made to make them recognize something's wrong and to fix it. So does this give us a green light? Does this give us permission to act like that, to do the exact same thing? You see somebody at church that's being rude or out there in the environment, you can call them a brood of vipers, a dog, pigs. Are we allowed to do that? No, we're not. There's a couple of real significant reasons why. One is that we are encumbered by something that Jesus was not when he was speaking. And that's that we have a sin nature, and Jesus doesn't. He does not have that limitation. When he sees somebody, he sees them rightly, righteously. When he's operating in judgment, he is righteous in that judgment. We do not have the luxury of this. And this challenges us in some very specific ways. First off, that it's not enough to do the same thing. You have to do it in the same way. It's not enough to just act like Jesus. To through repetition, do what Jesus was done. Like, you're not supposed to just randomly through your church's foyer just start throwing chairs and tables. So there's the reasoning behind that, the spirit, the motives that caused Jesus to do these things that we're supposed to emulate. And that is where we struggle. There's a lot of people that try to duplicate the actions of church fathers, medieval church leaders and things, without taking into consideration the time and circumstances that led up to them. And as a result, things don't go well. They end up not being received in the same way. So it is very important that you simply don't look at the superficial. You have to look at the supernatural involved as well. And you know what? Quite frankly, it's important that we operate in the way we frame our doctrines, in the way we frame our guidelines, so that they're not so strict that we make Jesus a sinner, that we make Jesus appear to be a sinner. That's a one thing to recognize, of that. On the one hand, that if our religious restrictives make Jesus into a sinner because he made wine at a wedding, that he consumed alcohol, that it's us that's wrong, not him. In the same way that if our restrictions on language are so strenuous that even Jesus can't get by, and we see this conflict occurring in the gospel narratives where they're talking about the Sabbath, Jesus healing people on the Sabbath, or them gleaning the edges of fields on the Sabbath. Pharisees like, you're not allowed to do that. They do a similar thing when it's talking about hand washing. Why is it that your people, they don't wash their hands before they eat? And Jesus is, listen, I know this is important to you, but it's not important to me because it's not important. When talking about the Sabbath, like, listen, the Sabbath rules over you, but I, as the Son of Man, even rule over the Sabbath. Like, they didn't understand who he is, and that is why they didn't understand what he was doing. The same thing is that if you don't know Jesus, you don't recognize who he is, then you won't understand, comprehend what it is that he's doing either. You need to have both of these things. It's not enough to just know the laws or the legalisms personally that you abide by. It's also significant and important for you to know who Jesus is, so that you can recognize not only what he was doing, why he was doing it, and also recognize what it says about himself. So, are we, as believers, allowed to use derogatory, slurred language? The answer is no, but the reason for that is that we have these encumbrances, these handicaps spiritually that limit our perspective. We simply are not righteous the way that Jesus is righteous. But it's also notable that because Jesus is holy, we can learn things from these instances. Like when you feel that friction of, I thought we weren't allowed to, when you feel that, you're recognizing something in the text that's trying to teach you more about this subject than what you knew beforehand. It's trying to get you to recognize something. It's trying to deepen your wisdom, deepen your knowledge, both about Christ and about the subject that is being discussed in the light of Christ. So that's a key to help you know, to help you learn, to help you understand, and to grow deeper in your relationship with Christ.